Throughout the Second World War, there were scores of war crimes and atrocities committed against civilians and innocent people. In German-occupied lands, the death squads known as the Einsatzgruppe followed the advancements of the Wehrmacht, and they rounded up civilians and forced them to dig their own graves inside their hometowns and settlements. In small groups, these innocent people were then taken into these pits, and they were either shot by a firing squad who stood on the edge of the pit, or they were shot by a sole executioner who ordered the victim to lie down on their front, and he then placed a pistol against the nape of their neck. Inside of different lands there were other tragic crimes committed, and one operation launched by the Germans against possible resistors within Soviet lands was Operation Winter Zauber, or Operation Winter Magic. This was a horrendous mission, which resulted in the destruction of hundreds of villages and the executions of over 11,000 people. Welcome to The Untold Past. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Operation Winter Magic took place between the 15th of February and the 30th of March 1943, and the plan was for the German army and the Axis forces to establish a depopulated buffer zone of roughly 25 miles along the Belarusian and Latvian border. Because of this, they wanted to reduce many settlements to nothing, and there were many villages which were targeted, and the point of this was to stop the partisans in gathering resources and settling in the region. The partisans were some of the most successful resistance fighters of the Second World War, and they would rise up to disrupt and cause chaos with occupying German forces. They wanted to regain their homelands, and many lived inside of camps within forests and mountainous regions, and they embarked on a campaign of guerrilla warfare to dent the Germans who they resented. They even used young people to help them gain resources. But if found of being suspected of being a partisan, then these people would often face the most brutal ordeals and the most harrowing of treatment. Suspected partisans were tortured, often within an inch of their life, and if they gave over no information, they were executed in front of large crowds to send a clear message to people. Operation Winter Magic was an anti-partisan operation which aimed to strike fear into the resistors, but also to prevent them being able to operate as a force. The Germans began ruthlessly, and they continued in this manner within the region, and the buffer zone was set up between Drissa and Smolnya, and it covered a lot of different towns and settlements. But the German forces slaughtered many people inside their own homes. The SS or Wehrmacht and Axis forces often executed people within their own homes, bursting in and shooting indiscriminately, but then they covered the bodies of their victims in straw and then set this on fire, engulfing the whole house, in a thinly veiled attempt to hide their crimes. There were many people who were also deliberately burned alive within their homes and settlements. Many women and children were quickly rounded up, and were then force-marched to a special execution zone, which was known as the Second Schlussing. And on the way here, many people were shot, and when they arrived they were shot in mass graves. Some people did manage to survive, and they were then sent to concentration camps, where their suffering ordeal continued, and some women had their children ripped away from them, and some were sent to Germany to go and work. But between the 16th and the 18th of February 1943, the Germans went on the rampage, and they conducted operations in the area of Rositza. Whilst here younger people, and those who were considered fit enough to work, were sent to different settlements, where they were then crammed into a railway boxcar, and they were then sent to a concentration camp to work, and others were sent back to Germany. But those who did not get selected were taken into houses and barns, and they were then executed en masse. In particular, there were 2 priests who were forced into a barn with many victims, and the Nazi officers then threw grenades into the structure, shot their machine guns through it, and eventually burned the barn to the ground, with no chance of survival due to the fact they had barricaded the doors and any entrance. There were others in the village of Rositza who were shot indiscriminately for protesting to the Germans, and they wanted them to at least save the children and to spare them. One former witness who saw the brutality firsthand claimed, "We gathered and were led along the road, crossed the river, and there, on the tanks, the SS and the dogs. They drove us to a village, Kulakovo. Women and children were placed in the local school, men inside the barn. Then the interpreter tells us and two other families who were sitting nearby to leave. At the porch there was a sled. We sat down in it, rode 30 metres and saw that the local school was on fire. It was first doused with gasoline and then fired on with incendiary bullets. The barn with the men was also set on fire. Those trying to get out through the windows or the roof were shot. Women began to scream, and the policeman took the whip and began to hit them hard and scream, "Be quiet or I'll shoot." This woman then stated that those who survived were then sent to Salaspils concentration camp, and they were given no food and water, and many died due to the suffocating conditions on the journey. But throughout the course of Operation Winter Magic, hundreds of villages were destroyed. In one district, 183 were burned to the ground, and there were thousands who were killed, with many more rounded up for forced labour projects. This was all, let's remember, done in the name of preventing the partisans from conducting raids and sabotage against German forces. But the partisans who were based in these regions tried their best to repel Axis forces, and in particular 90 of them fought out against 4 battalions who were backed up by air support and also tanks. But then to rescue people, the Soviet 6th Air Army managed to evacuate thousands to safety. The operation was overseen and supervised by the higher SS and police leader of the region, Friedrich Jeckeln, who would at the end of the war be sentenced to death for his destructive crimes, and he was executed. There were many different perpetrators of the slaughter, including 7 different Latvian police battalions, an SS police company, German anti-aircraft batteries and divisions, other German platoons, as well as members of the Air Force. Different formations of soldiers were also drafted in throughout to provide and continue with the slaughter, and there were roughly 4,000 Axis soldiers who were involved in the operation, as well as around 210 people of the Einsatzkommando, the Nazi death squads, who conducted execution within the lands. As a result of Operation Winter Magic, it's believed that thousands of people were killed, and many villages were destroyed and were never built again. What is even shocking today is the fact that many of these crimes have yet to have been uncovered and found, as some of the sites of these villages were burned to the ground, and the remains of the victims have also yet to be unearthed. Operation Winter Magic showed how fearful the Germans were when it came to the partisan fighters, and how concerned they were about them gaining an advantage during their occupation and taking action against them. It took place following the capitulation of Stalingrad, and it was a mission which aimed to shore up the defences in the face of the impending Soviet advancement, but it had a huge death toll. It was ruthless and destructive. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.